All right. Okay. So welcome everyone. So today the topic is winning your manpower challenges. I think a lot of us have faced manpower issues during this period, and it's not been easy for a lot of businesses to cope with the changing landscape of business and stuff during the COVID period lah. So perhaps without further ado, let's introduce ourselves to everyone so that they know who we are.
Yep.
So jointly presented by GLF, GYK, and Forbes. All right, perhaps let's go in order lah. So we can start with Eric.
Okay, hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Eric. I'm currently the consultant with GLF Partners Private Limited, and we focus in helping SMEs and startups in finance-related areas. Just a brief background of myself, I was the management team with well-known hotel operator at corporate level and property level, assuming leadership role within the space of finance. Earlier on, I was with the Big Four external audit for about 5 years. As a chartered accountant, I hope to provide the experience that I have acquired over the years and share it with you all. Okay, over to Song Yao.
Yeah, so hi everybody, my name is Song Yao. So I myself, I'm actually the consulting lead for GYK Private Limited. I actually focus, predominantly in finance, operation, human capital, risk-related business transformation for clients across various industries lah. So just a bit background information about myself. Previously, I was just a few months back, actually, I was senior manager with Pricewaterhouse Consulting in Southeast Asia. And actually, I lead both large and small scale transformations, business process review, re-engineering, and various digitalization initiatives for my clients lah. So I hope to bring this mature knowledge to the rest of the SME clients who is attending our webinar today, or even more to the wider audience too. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So for me, I'm Ryan. I hold an MBA, and basically my background was from private equity. I've always been an entrepreneur. So even during my private equity days, I actually held shares in a firm and things like that. I've built businesses in about 3 continents. So mainly in Africa, that was my start. And then later on in Asia. So that was an IT focused business. My primary area of consulting is in IT as well as HR strategy. On to Willie.
Okay, so hi, I'm Willie. My focus has always been about compliance, so just bookkeeping, tax, right, the very basic stuff. Also, together with Ryan, we actually have the employment agency. So we're actually certified employment intermediaries, right? So we can help you, or we can give you advice regarding, like, the proper way, especially, in the proper way to deal with manpower, especially in this kind of situations where a lot of things are quite uncertain. There's a lot of issues going on, and there's a lot of changing regulation or changing expectations that come along the way, right? As government announced. Yeah. So I guess today that's what it is all about.
Yep. All right. Okay, shall we hand it over to Song Yao to start on the overview?
All right, thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Willie. Thank you to all the other speakers. So I think before we deep dive into all the further details on how we can actually better manage our costs and stuff like that, job redesign, just want to have the end in mind, right? To understand what we hope that the audience today will be able to take away from this webinar itself. So there are 4 categories that we classify it for simple documentation, for your simple reference. Those are the what, the why, and the when and how. Okay, these are the 4 questions that you should be asking yourself and thinking through it when you're actually dealing with manpower management, costing issues, or even redesign kind of projects. Okay, so I think without further ado, let's deep dive into our webinar today. And I'll pass that on back to Ryan and Willie, who will kickstart with the next few slides.
Okay. So, okay, perhaps I think the main thing on everybody's mind right now is, number one, can I keep my employees given the current business climate? I mean, all of us, we serve corporate clients, and we do see that, you know, many clients of ours suffer. They have to cut their employees' pay, or, you know, they may be looking into retrenching employees and things like that. But a lot of SMEs, the issues that they face is that they do not comply with the legal requirements as set out by MOM. And it's very important that you do, because the Employment Act is there for fairness. You have to act fairly towards your employees as well. As much as, you know, your business is suffering, you do owe a standard of care to your employees, I would think. So yeah, we'll jump into the first bit. So there are a few things to take note of. How do you cut costs with employees? There are just a few ways, correct? Firstly, you can cut the rate of pay of your employees. Secondly, you can cut the number of days worked, which a lot of employers are opting to do right now, because, you know, they obviously have to put their employees on unpaid leave and things like that during this period. Obviously, because your offices cannot open anyway. And as well as retrenching. So that is cutting your staff strength. So these are the three main ways. So, you know, each way has its pros and cons. And of course, you should weigh out the options. And that is why you should engage an expert to always weigh out the options with you, rather than, you know, just making a decision and then sending a HR memo out to your employees, and, you know, later on getting complaints from MOM and your company gets its privileges suspended. Because there's quite a lot of things that MOM can do to you as an employer. They can suspend your rights for EPs, work passes, and other permits. MOM can also mandate that, you know, you go to jail or you do courses if you breach the Employment Act. And also the fines are pretty stiff. The fines are about 3,000 and upwards, depending on how many employees you have and how many laws you broke. So that is generally not recommended lah. So for cutting the rate of pay, there are a few things to take note of. You need your employees to basically consent to it. You cannot cut the rate of pay to your employees. Like, we have been advising so many SMEs and so many employers, I'm sure you guys can add on to that as well, that basically tell us like, oh, I'm just going to send a memo out to my employees and, you know, just say, okay, I cut your pay by 20 or 30% because business is not doing well. But, you know, that is not legal. I mean, really, that is not the way to do it. And that's one of the reasons why it actually brought us to do this particular webinar as well. Because a lot of employers don't actually know what are their employee rights. You need to get consent of your employees, and that consent has to be in writing. And your employee can withdraw that consent at any time. And you cannot coerce as well. You cannot like threaten your employees and say things like, you know, oh, okay lah, fine lah, then I just fire you. You know, you can't do things like that. I mean, you can give them the reality. So an example of one of the clients in a case study that we did, basically, you know, our client had to tell their employees that, look, we either cut your rate of pay across the board, or we will have to let go of maybe 20 or 30% of you. So that is a realistic fact. And, you know, the employees understood it. The management as well acted in solidarity with their employees. You know, they told the employees that, okay, we will take the pay cuts as well. And this is how many percent pay cut we are going to take along with you. So, you know, in that case, it actually turned out really well because they got every single employee in the company to agree to the pay cuts. So, you know, all's well that ends well. Everyone agrees, everyone's happy. But do note also that all these cuts are subject to a maximum of 50%. You cannot cut more than that. If not, it is against the law. Yeah, so just be a bit careful of how you cut your employee salary. in terms of rate of pay, which is basically the amount of pay that your employee receives per day or per hour. So the next method is, of course, cutting the number of days worked, which is your unpaid leave option. In the same way, you need your employees to consent. They are the ones who apply for leave. You cannot force unpaid leave on your employees. You cannot just take it and shove it down their throats. It doesn't work that way. You cannot just say, oh, you need to take this many days of unpaid leave. I'm mandating this. It's not the way it works. You have to get your employees to apply for it in writing, and they have to consent for it as well. But unpaid leave, unlike cutting the rate of pay, has no maximum deduction, which is quite good. So like for this period, if you know you cannot open for an extended period of time, you can actually advise your employees to go on unpaid leave for maybe half the days or more than half the days, provided of course they agree to it lah. I mean, all that is down to negotiations. And in the same way, you need to show your employees that you are in it with them together. That's the most important fact. Like MOM has always been pushing for tripartite, mediation and things like that, for basically employers and employees to talk to each other rather than a one-way communication flow. Yeah, so that's one of the things to consider lah. And lastly would be retrenching employees. So when you retrench your employees, it's a bit trickier. If your contract does have retrenchment benefits, you need to pay those retrenchment benefits if the employee has longer than 2 years of service. Or it depends on your contractual terms. Like if you say after 12 months, you will be entitled to these benefits, you have to pay out as well. But the minimum is 2 years of service. You cannot drop below the minimum mandated by MOM. And of course, you have the notice period. So recently in the news, I think all of us have read that quite a number of employers have been basically unfairly dismissing their employees and telling them that, oh, you are fired and you are not retrenched. And there's a reason for that. When you fire an employee, you don't have to pay for the notice period, but you need a good reason to fire your employee. If they breach the contract, if they do not fulfill their contractual obligations and things like that, you can fire an employee, but you cannot fire an employee simply because your business is not doing well. That's not the right way to do things. So for retrenchment of employees, we would always recommend that you pay at least the notice period compensation. And there is a minimum stipulated in the Employment Act. So if your contract has a higher rate of notice period and compensation, you should follow your contract. Or if your contract has a lower rate, then it means that you have already breached the Employment Act, which means you need to pay the minimum stipulated by the Employment Act. So yeah, these are the few things to take care of in the legal standpoint, because as employment agents, we do see a lot of employees coming to us to complain and say, oh, my employer treated me fairly, what can I do? And we usually advise them to speak to MOM and speak to the tripartite alliance, which will basically do investigations, and the employer will get it as well. And it's not great, It ends up with a bad taste in the mouth for everyone, the employee, the employer, and it spoils the employer's branding as well. So yeah, if you want to read a little bit more, you can look at the bottom. There's a link there, or you can just go to Google and search Employment Act, Chapter 91, SSO AGC. You will get the actual act in its full nature and everything, and you can read it. All right.
I think before we go on, we could maybe look at the poll results itself. Like a lot of people actually agree that a retrenchment exercise in 2020 is inevitable, right? And I guess a lot of people are expecting, or even employees would also expect something similar to happen. But the way we retrench the employees will bring a lot of respect, or it will bring a lot of ill will from the employees, and it actually directly affect the brand in the coming years, right? Like I think a lot of employers would by now have heard of how Uber and how Airbnb actually fired their employees or retrenched their employees, and it's creating wave beyond just the employees in themselves, right? So sometimes when retrenching employees, a lot have to do with the human touch instead of just, how much compensation we are actually providing to the employees itself. Uber actually provided very generous um, compensation or retrenchment packages, but then at the end of the day, the way they do it was not so nice, right? Which caused a very backlash from the employees, and some customers are also very unhappy with how they are treating the employees so far. It caused the brand to lose its shine for just for something that a lot of other companies are also doing at the same time, right? So I guess that is something important to take note of, lah.
Yeah. And basically, things like when you retrench an employee and, you think it doesn't come back to you, nowadays there's Glassdoor. There are so many review sites that basically, allows employees to write about their employers and rate their employers. And if you actually look at the statistics on Glassdoor, a lot of SMEs that are on, I would say, on the larger side of small, quite a number of them actually have very bad reviews on Glassdoor, simply because of the way that they treat their employees, in terms of their benefits and things like that. So this is an area of, I would say, risk that you should not take, and that you should mitigate. You should definitely aim to treat your employees fairly, because even though you are retrenching them, you should still upkeep your brand and upkeep the respect. Barring the law, the law is the minimum basis for comparison, but you should try to go above and beyond that where you can. All right, guys, anything else to add to this, or any questions? Or
All good with me.
all right, okay. So let's head on to the next area. So as I mentioned earlier, there are some do's and don'ts. In general, we recommend basically most of these frameworks to our clients, and it has served them well. Like, most of our clients have actually gotten their employees to agree to the pay cuts, agree to the less number of days work per month and things like that, simply because they have effective communication. At the end of the day, the baseline is effective communication with your employees. So one of the things is to communicate with your employees on whatever decision you need to make that impacts them. When it especially is a big decision in a time like this, everyone is unsure, everybody is scared of whether or not I'm going to lose my job. And of course, don't threaten your employees, as I said earlier. Basically, if you coerce your employees into doing something, especially over WhatsApp and stuff like that, and they have evidence, basically whatever they have signed will not hold up. And they can just bring that to MOM, everything will be overturned, and as an employer, you will get in a lot of trouble. And also, another thing that we spoke to our clients about is, of course, listening to the employees' opinions and ideas also. So this is an important one, because your employees are the ones fighting, on the forefront for your organization. And often they may have ideas, or they may see things that you as an employer don't. And basically they may come up with certain ideas across the board. Like, we've heard of a case where, the employer was hell-bent on firing, or rather retrenching at least like 20 to 30% of his employees. And instead, the employees, they sort of agreed with each other, they spoke to each other, and then they told the employer, okay, never mind, we will all take a level pay cut to match the same cost. And that was an initiative by the employee and not the employer, which is kind of strange. Options should be given at the start. And collective decision making, basically, when you include your employee in the decision making process, it helps a lot, because they feel included. And in change management, there are basically, at the base of it, there are three types of change. Either change that you do onto people do onto you, or you do together with the other person. And the most effective type of change has always been changes that are done together, because everyone feels involved, everyone feels that they are engaged in the process. They feel that, okay, my opinion was heard, my opinion was evaluated, and basically, now the decision is being made in its entirety. So I also get to understand other people's decisions. And of course, lastly, as I mentioned earlier, always get written consent. Do not do verbal and because it gets messy, it can become a situation of he said, she said, and stuff like that. So always get written and signed consent if possible. If not possible, nowadays WhatsApp is allowed, emails, and any kind of instant message is also basically allotable as consent. All right. So without further ado, we shall go on to the next part.
Okay. Hi everyone. So thanks Ryan for the great insight. So basically now I'll be talking about flexible work arrangement. So flexi work arrangements have been widely practiced in the developed countries, and it has proven to be beneficial to both employers and employees. And but however, there are always myths to these flexible work arrangements. For example, the employee is not able to cope with the demands of the full workload, or maybe lack of commitment, or and also maybe there's some reduction in productivity of the individuals. And from the employer side, it is also maybe a bit hard to manage on this part. However, with flexible work arrangement, it comes with benefits to this. It improves the work performance and improve relationship with employees and employers, as well as the colleagues, improve the health and well-being of everyone within the office. Um, of course, it will reduce work-life conflicts and a reduction in occupational stress and improve organizational performance. Because flexible work arrangement usually comes with your own time, own target. Therefore, when you actually go on that pace, you actually reduce a lot of distractions within the office, sometimes some gossips within the office that you can actually minimize that. So these are actually the true benefits of it. So when I come to, there are a few types of flexible work arrangements that we can actually work on. For example, flexi working time, where employees can actually dictate or actually can start on their own time and then end on their own time as well. And this actually gives them a lot of benefits where they can actually have their own, manage their own personal commitments and also their own KPIs on the work. Cut time or reduce time. This can be actually implemented as well. For example, an employee don't have to work full week. They can actually work maybe 3 days a week, or maybe every day 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. So this one, for an employee, they can actually be more flexible, and for employers, it's actually reduction in cost. For example, if let's say you employ a part-time, your cost is actually lower as compared to a full-time. Additionally, we can also have a job sharing, where employees can actually, two employees can actually job share their work scope to another person. So this will create some harmony, and also each other knows each other's work, so you can actually complement each other on their work as well. Employers also can actually introduce on term jobs where you can come in as a 1 term, 3 months, 6 months type of jobs to actually complete the projects. Yeah. So compressed work is actually where you can actually do this 3 days, but you do 10 hours. 3 days you do 12 hours, or 4 days you do 10 hours. So instead of the full 5 days work. So this can actually you can actually have employees can actually have extra days of rest. And lastly, the telecommunicating, where you can actually work from home, which we are all doing now, work from home, or actually work in a satellite office or branch office. You don't actually have to go to the main office to work. Yeah. So at the end of the day, after sharing these few types of work, at the end of the day, it's still down to the supervisors and managers' mindset to do this. So firstly, we need to empower everyone to do this. We need to ensure clear communication between the employer and employee and make formalized arrangement. And for example, if there's an employee who comes to you and requests for flexible work arrangements, do consider them, don't reject them, because this may work out to be better for them and for you as well. And of course, at the end of the day, we need to encourage all the managers to work flexibility themselves. You don't have to be at full time. You don't have to, be restricted to the normal work hours. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's just all mindset where you can actually, we need to start training everyone on that. There is a link at this PowerPoint slide where you can actually read further at www.mom.government.sg media, and you can actually look at this link and actually read up more. Okay, thanks so much.
Perhaps to frame it a little bit, flexible work arrangements helps you to basically not have to give your employees such severe pay cuts, not have to retrench your employees and things like that. So it is sort of a new way to more reliably share the resources across your organizations. Yeah.
Yes, agree on that.
Yep. I think to add on to what Eric has said also, before I touch on this job redesign and reimagine, I think, with flexible working arrangement, right, it's another solution in terms of how you can mobilize your manpower. I think Ryan has started off with a very good setting in terms of setting the tone in terms of, how, what are the rules and the legal standards behind manpower and how we can manage them. But this is one of the solutions that you can actually consider when you are thinking of, remanaging or restructuring your manpower within your organization itself, right? And, I do know that a lot of you have concerns on flexible working arrangements, right? Especially for SMEs, because our organization is not as structured as like banks where there are guidelines, even like what time they come in and stuff like that. But I think it's all in the mindset. We are belonging to a society, a era where people are more open-minded these days, and therefore we have to adapt to this new culture, this new thinking, right? That working can be done anywhere and everywhere, and I think this is the mindset that we see in a lot of youngsters. When I was in PwC, one of the key biggest top 3 things were always, can I have flexible working hours? And that's why you started seeing a lot of even bigger organizations, the big 4, the banks are starting to implement this because they come to think it has become a lifestyle. It is a thinking amongst the young people. And I think people are now more matured in terms of, flexible working from home, right? They are more outcome driven. And I think, with all this said, we still need to actually enforce certain guidelines, to empower them to think for themselves and to think for the organization. I think only in this way, where we actually increase people's maturity level, can we actually reach a higher level of business skill, right? Kind of heights. So I think with this, it's I hope this explained a little bit more about the mindset. Gives you a bit more insights and perspective on this. All right. Now, maybe I'll go on to the next topic, the job redesign. Okay, so for job redesign, so this is one of the solutions that you can actually also consider while really looking into your manpower management, right? So today I'm just going to keep it very simple. I'm not going to go heaps into the details. I'm just going to talk about the 4 things: the what, the why, when, and how you should do it for just job redesign. All right. Okay. Next slide. So, what is job redesign? Okay, we start off with that. Job redesign, basically, as defined by digital HR tech, it's actually the process of rearranging tasks and responsibilities to better align roles within the changing environment inside and outside the organization. So in a very nutshell, basically job redesign is to really rethink about how we do things, okay? How we do things on the ground. What are the skill sets, okay, that we need? Okay, what are the job responsibility of a particular function, okay? And how it has changed because of the changes in demand from the market itself, or even within the culture, okay? So these are the reasons why job will be changed, okay, will need to be redesigned. And actually, this term actually comes about because of that, okay? So I have a little quote at the bottom, okay? Design is not just what it looks, design is about what it works. Okay, this is by Steve Jobs. So basically what I'm trying to bring out here is, a lot of times you talk about, all these big words like job redesign and the process redesign. What does redesign actually mean? What does design actually mean? Sometimes it's not about just looking good, like, oh, I have all these things, reduction here and there, reduction cost. It talks about more, design actually talks about more holistic kind of feel, right? Thought process. It looks into cost, looks into productivity, it looks into employee satisfaction, and how it works for our people, right? Ultimately, our people are our greatest asset. And therefore, job design should actually ultimately address that particular problem. Okay, so I think I'll go on to the next slide. Okay, now, I talk about a little bit about what job redesign is about, how it is defined, how it came about. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about why you should actually do job design, okay? Adopt job redesign. Okay, there are 3 very simple benefits that actually we came out. Okay, I've done our research across the market itself, and these are the 3 most common reasons as to why people do job redesign. Okay, the top one is definitely the one in the center, productivity enhancement. Okay, so, and then subsequently you have also more cost effective and increasing of employee satisfaction. Now, a lot of people will ask me, hey, so what do you mean by, how do you make sure that it's cost effective and at the same time increase my employee satisfaction? Doesn't make sense. Most of the time when we talk about cost effectiveness, it means cutting my employees' pay or maybe asking them to go on leave, right? How would they be happy with that? So very easy. Okay, when I talk about cost effectiveness, I'm talking about redeploying, okay, people who are not so productive in less productive roles into more value-adding roles. Okay, so for example, it might be the case of just doing an investment of putting in a machine to do very manual and tedious tasks, right? Using like new technologies like robotics, process automation, and freeing up this manpower to do more value-adding jobs like judgment, right? At the end of the day, he can, based on some checklists, actually make some form of judgment, approval, and this will give them more job satisfaction rather than doing day in, day out, repetitive, manual kind of work. Okay, it also brings some sense of belonging, right? Oh, at least my boss kind of thinks of me and actually make progression within the organization itself. And this is a very important kind of mindset, right? People, when we actually did an interview way back when I was in PwC, one of the greatest top 3 things that people always is looking out for, it's they want, they want to have new challenges. They want to see new things. They don't want to be doing manual things, tedious things, and this is proven by surveys, right, year on year, that a lot of people are actually feedbacking to the bosses itself. So by undergoing this job redesign, you're effectively trying to redeploy people into these value-adding jobs, okay, becoming more cost-effective, but at the same time making them more happy. So you get a win-win situation where your productivity goes up and your employee retention rate goes up, right? You save costs on retraining new people, right? So overall, if you look at all this, it all gives rise to the ultimate aim of increasing our productivity, okay, where it's in the center, productivity enhancement. So all these are indirect benefits, okay? Right. So I think I've done a bit of explanation on the benefits on why you should actually perform job redesign. Now I'll actually move on to the next point, where I will talk about when, okay, you should actually perform this job redesign, okay? So I think, you know, many of you would say, hey, so very good, you know, now I know what job redesign is, what are the benefits, right? But it doesn't explain to me in terms of what kind of when should I actually do this, right? Should I do it, you know, at the start of my new startup? Should I do it maybe after 10 years? When is a good time to do it? So, you know, we at GYK, Forbes, and GLF, we have cracked our heads as well. We have actually reached out to a range of our clients or so, and I'm trying to understand actually when is the right time for them to change, right? When is the right time for them to do such a new initiative? And these are the three main things that we came up with. Okay, the top three things. Whenever there's a shift in market focus, when there's changes in market demands, okay, when there's organization restructuring. When I say organization restructuring, it means, for example, when there's changes within the operational processes, okay, when you automate a certain process or redesign a certain process, or even, for example, vertical or horizontal integration, for example, merger acquisitions, okay? Or the last part, it's actually resonation of key stuff, okay? So let me go through each of them more in detail right now. So, for example, starting part, market focus, okay, shift in market focus. You should actually perform some form of job redesign when there's shift in market focus. Reason, very simple. Okay, I'll give you an example. So, for example, in recent times where we have COVID, there are multiple reports that you might read out there that companies, fashion companies, are actually moving from making fashion apparels, okay, to making face masks. Now, this is something that is, you might think of it like, why are they doing it? How does it relate to their work, right? But in the sense, these companies actually undergo some form of simple or, you know, quick kind of redesign of their processes, okay, because their processes, their skill set are very highly transferable, okay? I would say maybe 70–80% are transferable. And that's why they are able to do this quickly and effectively, okay? But of course, along the way, they do have to realign, okay, their employee skill set to the new skill sets, okay, based on the outputs of products or services, okay? And that's how, this is actually one of the very good example that we see when it comes to changes in market demands, okay? Now for organization restructuring, a good example, it's actually business transformation. I do have a client who is looking to, who actually, I think a few weeks back, were actually talking to me, okay, to say, hey, so I want to relook into how I do my business, right? I've been around for 20–30 years, donkey number of years, and I need to restructure, right? I need to relook at how I do things. And when we relook at how you do things, you know, you are effectively also relooking at how your employees should do things, because processes change. Things that are done manually in the past will now be automated. And with automation, it does not mean not directly automated. Human inputs are still required, and certain skill sets are required, okay? So the responsibilities have to be included. And that's the reason why certain job functions will be made redundant, but new functions will also be made. Okay, so instead of going out to the market and just say, hey, this person no longer works for me, or his skill set is not important, I change him. What we do is a lot of companies actually retrain these people, redesign certain of these functions, and then subsequently retrain the right people, the people with the closest fit to this particular new job. That's that's what we are seeing in the market. Okay, lastly, it's the resonation of key staff. So we see a lot of older companies, you know, companies that are around for 20–30 years. When their key staff manager or director leaves the firm, they leaves a huge gap in their organization structure. And this person normally holds knowledge across a lot of functions. So instead of just saying, hey, I'm just hired somebody with a lot of years of experience from other companies, sometimes it's wise to redesign and break down this job functions into multiple bite-sized pieces for different people to go up and actually help in the operations, instead of just putting in one person and actually giving him huge burden and huge responsibility, which becomes a burden to him, right, to actually fulfill. Okay, so I think under this kind of three scenarios, if you're facing any of these three scenarios, okay, you should actually really consider performing a job redesign. Okay, so in the next slide, I'll talk about how you should do it. I talk about the what's, I talk about the benefits, right? I talk about when you should even do it. Now, I'll actually share a little bit more with you about how we normally run a project for our clients, or how our clients have to actually adopt and change themselves. How do they transform? Okay. Now, the first question first, okay, it's job redesign. Okay, there are multiple types of job redesigns, like I said, in the market right now. The two most popular ones that we're seeing in the market is workforce optimization and succession planning. Now, let me explain a little bit more about these two more popular redesigns, job redesign. So workforce optimization talks about how we actually better manage our manpower, okay, at this moment. Okay, how do we optimize them, make sure that they hit optimal productivity levels? Okay, you don't need to be 100%. Optimal level can be like 90%, 95%, but nobody will hit 100%, right? We can't be, impossible in any scenario, cannot hit. But how do we then hit the 95% mark? Okay, this is something that you have to think about, and to put the right people in the right places. The second one is succession planning. So going back to my previous slide, when I talk about resignation of key staff, okay, like staff who has been around for a donkey number of years, or who holds important position and have great understanding of our organization, you need to take time to actually groom a successor or successors to actually take over his job. And that's why we have this succession planning job redesign, to ensure that our operations, okay, doesn't fail or doesn't just come to a halt just because of this resignation or retirement of this key staff. Now, there's one more job redesign type that I didn't really put in here. This is more for Singapore context. So Singapore government has been advocating for employees to actually hire older workers. So a lot of our grants these days, in terms of job redesign, actually addresses that issue. Job redesign for older working staff. Okay, so you can go to a lot of MOM sites, Workforce Singapore. They have a lot of grants, and they talk about job redesign. And I think, hey, so is this job redesign pertaining to this workforce optimization, succession planning? Answer is yes and no. A lot of these grants, excuse me, a lot of these grants actually look into job redesign for older staff. So you need to take note of that. Okay. Now, once you have identified the job redesign project that you want to undertake, okay, do some analysis. Okay. The next step for you is to actually sit down and analyze and understand the different workplace profiles. Okay, what do I mean by workplace profiles? It means understanding your workers' background, skill set, okay, their job responsibilities, and what are the job functions in your organizations. Okay, so it's a detailed profile you need to understand. Okay, and this normally depending on the size of your organization, takes from 1 week, 2 weeks, to even up to months. Okay, depending on the size of your company. Now, some of the key things or techniques that people or project teams, consultants use are actually competency mapping and functional analysis to actually perform this analysis on your workplace profiles. Okay, You can Google them and see how it works. Okay, I'm not going to deep dive into the technicalities of this mapping and analysis. Okay, now once you have done all this analysis and have a better understanding of workplace profiles, then I think the next question you need to ask yourself is, what is my future target operating model? How do I want to change? How do I want to transform my business, right? And that's where you need to have a good understanding of, not only just your business process transformation, but you need to understand how it will affect the people on the ground. What are the skill set then you need to look out for? Okay, and once you have that in mind, the establishment of target state, okay, that's where you can actually do some form of gap analysis and say, oh, I've identified some gaps between where I am right now and how I want to go, right? Where I want to be. Right. So this is very important, this step, okay? The gaps. Once you have the gaps, can you identify what are the lacking skill sets you have in your organization? Okay. And then you can then try to match the right role to the right people. Okay. Or maybe if you really don't have a right person to match to the role, that's where you can then consider hiring new people. Okay. Now, if you match the right role to the right people, that's not the end, or even hire the right people, that's not the end. Okay, you need to have an action plan. Okay, this action plan is how you actually implement some form of change management plan to manage the changes in the job functions that you make for our staff. Okay, because you can't change this person, let's say, for example, from operations to actually, like, let's say, trade finance, right? Financing department. You need to ease them into their role to help them to feel comfortable, right? We are all humans. We don't really like changes. So we need to have that kind of comfort and that kind of assurance from our company that we will have the right skill set to actually transit into our new role. So this bring me to my last point, which is training, right? Not only must we have a plan, okay, like, oh, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then slowly ease them into the new job. Training is an essential component, okay, to helping our staff, okay, change their job functions, okay. And I'm very happy to say this, in Singapore, our government has given us heaps of training grants, okay. You can go to like Skills Future, WSG, I think training grants are up to like 80-90% for selected courses. So you guys can go there, take a look, okay, and see how it can help you to support retraining of your staff, okay. And talking about grants, okay, and I know that a lot of you will be very interested in grants. Right? I myself, I'm interested in grants. So in the next slide, we'll talk a bit more, okay, about what are the grants out there and how it can help you, okay, in terms of meeting some of your operational costs, okay. So this slide here that you're seeing, they are not the full range of all the grants, okay, in Singapore. We have just selected this few because these are more relevant for today's webinar, okay. We have the other manpower grants, we have work-life grants. I'll leave this to work-life grants to maybe Eric to talk about, other manpower grants to Eric, to Ryan and Willie to talk about. I just want to focus a little bit more about enterprise development grants, since I'm a practicing management consultant myself. Now, enterprise development grant, I think, is one of the more popular grants that I think a lot of Singaporean business owners will have heard about or have actually utilized before. So this enterprise development grant is actually rolled out by government purely for a few things, okay, with purely just 2 or 3 objectives, is to help companies to grow, to transform, and to venture out of Singapore. Okay, these three objectives. Now, with these 3 objectives, Enterprise Singapore has come out with 3 different pillars, okay, structured pillars for businesses to actually follow. Okay, it's kind of foolproof. So, for more information, you can go up to this link that I put in the box. Okay, the key requirements to actually have a look at the key requirements. But let me run through with you all the 3 pillars. Okay, first pillar, core capabilities. Okay, what does core capability means? Okay, it means that they want to help businesses to prepare for growth. Correct? You need to have the foundation. Okay, and if you don't have the foundation, okay, this particular section is best for you. So for example, some of my clients come and say, hey, so I don't have the infrastructure, okay, for what high level automation or customization automation, right? But I want to transform myself. I want to see where I want to transform my business to. No, I don't even have that idea. So this core capabilities, it's a very, very good grant for you, okay, because it helps you to hire a consultant with market knowledge to bring in to help you to do some form of gap analysis of where you stand against your peers or where you want to be, right? You want to say, hey, so I want to be at this level, right? But I know I'm this level, but I don't know how to reach there, right? These are some of the questions that people ask me, and it can be covered under your core capabilities. Okay, so one of the scope within core capabilities is human capital development. Okay, which are the topics that we are actually talking about within this webinar. Okay, now the second part of it is the innovation productivity. When you're a bit more, when your organization becomes a bit more developed, has the required infrastructure, right, this is the scheme for you. Okay, it helps to support companies to explore new areas of growth, okay, and efficiency. Basically, this is a prelude to you before you move out to overseas. Okay, it kind of cement your production, your efficiency within Singapore. Okay, it helps you to hit the highest level of output. Okay, so this is the part, okay, you can look into if you are looking at automation and process redesign. Okay, this is for you. Okay, now market access, I'm not going to touch much about that. It's just about you expanding into overseas market. Okay, so I think these are the 3 different pillars of enterprise development grant, and how it can help you. Okay, so if you have questions later on, you can put it down in the Q&A, and I'll try my best to, together with the rest of the speakers, to try to answer your question. I'll just pass on the mic to maybe Eric to talk a little bit more about the work-life grants, and then maybe Ryan or Willie, y'all can take over for the manpower grants.
Okay, thank you, Song-Yao, for the great insights. Yeah, so I'll be talking about the work-life grants, which the Singapore government also have. So one of the, what is work-life grant? Companies can actually apply for grants and incentives to implement flexible work arrangements, and this actually incentivize companies to sustain the use of flexible work arrangement for all employees and to create work-life harmony at the workplace. To apply for this grant, you will need to apply to SNEF, NTUC, E2I, and Singapore Manufacturing Federation. Third-party vendors unfortunately cannot apply on the behalf. So to move on, I have actually FWA for work-life grants. We actually have FWA incentive and job sharing incentive. Okay, what is FWA incentive? FWA incentive is actually to incentivize companies to sustain implementation of FWAs for their local employees, while job sharing incentive is actually to incentivize employers to implement job sharing for employees at PMET level with gross monthly salary of at least 3,600 before job sharing arrangement. Okay, so for FWA incentive, of course, there is an amount for what the government can give. Okay, so the amount is up to 70,000 per company over 2 years. The computation yearly is actually 2,000 per local employee per year who is a regular user of FWA. And to be eligible for this, the employee must be a Singapore citizen of PR, and the employee must be a permanent contract or a minimum employment contract of at least 12 months. Company cannot claim for casual or temporary employees. And we need to actually apply tripartite standard on FWAs at the point of claim. Okay. So, and to support during the COVID-19, the companies can actually apply to expedite the support under the enhanced WILG. Under the enhanced WLG, an employee must work from home daily for at least 1 month after the COVID circuit breaker. So if this cannot be possible, the employee can actually adopt staggered hours. So this will actually enable you to apply for this grant, this FWA grant. So for job sharing incentive, it is actually there is an amount to it as well. It is up to 35,000 per company over 2 years, and the computation is actually for 3,500 per local full-time PMET employee per year who is a regular user of job sharing. So for the requirement, the companies again have to adopt the tripartite standard on FWA, and companies are only eligible to receive the job sharing incentive of 3,500 per local PMET employee, Singaporean or PR, who is a regular user per year for 2 consecutive years, capped at 35,000 per company. So these are basically the work-life grants that is introduced by the government. Okay, so over to Ryan and Vidi for the other manpower grants.
Okay, Willie, would you like to start on the grants? Hello? Hello, Willie? Are you muted?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I think you just go on first.
Okay, so basically right now, there are quite a lot of news articles and everything asking you to send your employees for training. They just say, oh, consider sending your employees for training. But I guess a lot of people are not very sure what kind of training it is or what they are talking about. And basically those grants, they actually cover your employees' hourly rate of pay for the training period. So it actually makes a lot of sense to use it because you can upskill your employees during this time. SSG and WSG grants have a load of courses, as Song Yao, I think he earlier mentioned. They have courses for basically design, they have courses for skilled work, like SSG, I think they even cover stuff like welding, metal work, and things like that. So it really depends on what industry you are in. I mean, every SME is in a different industry. But basically, what this grant allows you to do is to send your employees for training. That's number one. The government covers about 80 to 90% of the training, depending on what course you take. And they cover your employees' hourly salary up to a cap amount. So basically, when you do that, firstly, you already don't have to pay for your employees' education. And secondly, you don't have to pay for your employees' salary while they are on training as well. And I think that's a really good initiative, and it helps to reduce, your business costs. And it helps to increase your employees' engagement as well, because, if you put your employee on unpaid leave and just tell them, hey, don't work, honestly, you sit at home every day or so, they're going to be very bored and they're not going to be entertained or engaged. But there are so many online courses. Like for us, we have been sending ourselves even and our employees for courses related to accounting, related to advisory, consulting, and things like that. And it's very, very effective because they do it over Zoom. It's a sort of a full day course. You can visit like NTUC, SMU, NTU, NUS, almost every educational institution in Singapore that is, has good standing and stuff is registered for a certain amount of SSG courses in different specialities. And it really helps, like even for us, it keeps us engaged while we attend the course, and we get to upgrade ourselves. You improve your employee certifications, you give them more ideas because it's quite interactive as well. Even though it's a Zoom class, the employees do get to, mingle and get to know new people, their classmates from the class and everything. It's quite a life experience. I mean, especially when it's going to continue into June, right? Like because of the news yesterday, I don't think most of our offices or shops are going to open later in June, to be honest. So most likely it'll be July. So this is a good time to consider implementing all these schemes because it really helps to retain your employees and keep them engaged. Willie, you have anything to add to that? Oh, okay. All right, so let's go on to the next bit. So, okay, benefiting from expert advice. I mean, a lot of these things, when you can do it internally, yes, but when you do it internally, you don't benefit from expert advice, which is basically because for firms like ours, we touch so many SME clients. Like our portfolios include firms in basically shipping, firms in logistics, firms in finance, firms in everything, basically retail. We even do for retail shops, we do accounting for even hawkers and stuff like that. So basically, when you have an expert that has the breadth of knowledge across the different industrial sectors and things like that, it really helps to bring ideas to the table. And it also has a particular project know-how because we do it again and again and again so many times until it becomes more or less second nature to us. I mean, that is our business. Our business is in assisting companies with basically restructuring, redesign, optimization, and stuff like that. And of course, it also provides basically a third party, kind of an independent third party to be objective and to project manage the change for you. Because when you do it internally, there are always issues. Like currently, we are consulting one of the MNCs in Singapore. Basically, when you do it internally, how to be objective. Every department also want to say they are good. Every head of department also want to say, hey, my department very good. No need to change. That kind of thing. So basically, we come in as a third-party objective organization to basically look at their numbers and tell them that, hey, honestly, this is not correct or this is not right. This can be improved in certain ways. Yeah. So do you guys have anything else to add on that? Or
I think from an expert perspective, I think a lot of people will also ask like, hey, when is the right time to hire expert advisor, right? Actually, there is no such thing as, there's a wrong time or a right time, but typically, we see in the market when people reach out to consultants to change, to actually hire us, it's, besides all these 5 points that are listed below, it's also because they needed somebody who knows the inside and out of a certain topics, right? Because, I can share with you the process of how I does it, how to do certain things. But when it comes to actual fact, because we have been, on this kind of projects for a few times, there are some market best practices, okay, that we can also share with you, right, to actually further enhance and different perspective, if you think about it, that we bring to the table to help you to also look into and implement, right? So I think we are a group of, and besides advisors, there's also different types of advisors also. I think what you need to look for also, a very important pointer here is to have a pragmatic advisor, right? So just to share an example with you, we have seen clients who are in the midst of transformation. Now they hired consultants out there, and I think the consultant is so fixated about transforming their business, and I think the clients are very fixated on that too, and they forgot the other aspect part of our project, right? Rolling out a transformation project means that your business must scale, but at the same time, your business must survive. Okay, must survive. And a lot of times I've examples where two of my personal clients actually went bust, okay, in the midst of transformation or upgrade, because a lot of other factors were not taken into consideration. So you see, hiring expert advisor is more than just bring you just the subject matter expertise itself. It is to bring you that kind of other knowledge on how you can run a project, be it in a bite-sized kind of project, okay, to achieve your final aim of transformation, yet, okay, helping you to survive through these tough times, okay? Or you can go for advisor who is so fixated about just transformation and losing track of all the other important factors also. I think this is something that you need to consider when also employing expert advisor. Okay, yeah, thank you.
All right. So now we have hit the Q&A. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to put it in the Q&A box, or actually you can message us on Facebook, on the Facebook live video as well, and we'll respond to it. Okay. I think if there are no questions, perhaps we end it for today.
Sorry, I think there's one question.
Oh, is it?
Attendee.
Oh,
Yeah.
one popped up, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
I think it's a question for Willie and Ryan.
Okay.
Ruchi. Yeah, she's talking about the flexi working schedule. Sometimes there are no boundaries to the number of working days an employee is giving in the day, and there's no end to work. How to deal with a scenario like this?
Okay. Firstly, Ruchi, thanks for putting out this question. Basically, the way to deal with it is to also inculcate a sense of responsibility in employees. I think in Asia is quite common for overwork. Singapore, China, Japan, India as well. People literally can work like 60-hour weeks, 80-hour weeks, that kind of thing. And they can basically just push themselves over the limit. But the most important thing is to also inculcate certain values. Like one of the initiatives that we are intending to roll out is, to have a hobby allowance for our employees, so that basically, we push them to engage in hobbies, try to do other things besides work, and try to think outside of work as well. Because there is a lot to be learned. Like for Google, they do the 20% time. And for 20%, Google employees can basically just do anything they want. They can choose to waste it. They can choose to, go on a holiday or just completely not do anything. But what Google realized from doing that was basically that employees actually came up with little projects of their own and actually scaled those projects. And they eventually became part of Google's offerings. So in a sense, it's a blending of work and play in that sense, and allowing employees to basically, explore other things, do other things, and not consider it as work. So basically, in a given day, you have maybe about 8 hours to work, including overtime. Maybe at most you add another, 3-4 hours, 12 hours max. And you should not be spending the whole day doing like work. Because even in the most productive of places, it has been proven that, productivity is only around 60, 70%. 80% is good. 90% productivity is too good to be true already lah. So usually if you get productivity reports that are like 90% and above, you know that something is not right. So most of the time, you just have to inculcate a sense of responsibility lah in the employee, that they will manage their time well, and manage to, spend time with their family and things like that as well. And other ways, of course, is to go like what France did, which is to cut off all communications. Yeah. All right. Oh, sorry. Anybody have anything else to add on to that? Or? Let me see Facebook.
I think there's one question also.
What can I do on Facebook?
I think there is, yeah.
Okay, so we have a question from QK Jun, I think. Sorry if I mispronounce it, on Facebook. So you're asking about what you can do with employees who are not working during the circuit breaker period but still need their salary paid. As we mentioned earlier, I guess one of the things that you can do is to really send your employees for training, because at least the government will cover their salary partially, so that it's not so bad. You don't really have to give them a pay cut in that case if they are going for training and all these kinds of initiatives. Of course, another initiative that you can try is to negotiate with them and see if they are willing to get a salary but have their pay slightly reduced, maybe. That is one of the things you can consider. And of course, the last one is, of course, deferred leave. So one of the ways to actually do it is to use up their annual leave during the circuit breaker, so that after the period, basically you get them for their full time. So some of our clients, that's what they are doing. They are actually basically maximizing the leave of their employees. They use up the annual leave, the off in lieu, and every single other leave available before actually putting their employees on unpaid leave. So that actually at least gives your employee a little bit more salary. Because yes, I mean, of course, as employers ourselves, we do understand that it's unfair for you lah. Like, you have to pay your employee when they are not working and things like that. But, this period, there is not much choice to it. So, I mean, the government is giving a lot of incentives already. So you should try to tap on those things. Like you can visit Skills Future and stuff, look up courses for your employees and then go and enroll them in those courses, so that basically part of the salary is covered and you can still pay them. I hope that answers your question. Okay, any other Q&A? Okay, I think there's not many other questions already. So shall we wrap this up?
All right.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you have any, difficulties, or you need advice, or you want to embark on a project, let's say you're very bullish about this period and you already want to embark on a project, or if you want to talk to us about anything, basically you can just drop an email to info@entreadvice, SE is the verb.com. So, all right, thank you everyone for attending today, and thank you to all our panelists.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. All right.
All right.
Let's end the call.